Imagine a photograph so ordinary that it could be mistaken for any other. A moment frozen in time where two friends stand side by side, smiling, appearing perfectly innocent. At first glance, it tells a story of warmth, trust, and simplicity. But what if I told you that hidden beneath that surface was a secret so dark that it had remained invisible to the world for decades? What if the smiles you see were not just expressions of friendship, but masks concealing truths that history would one day uncover? That is the paradox of appearances. They comfort us, they deceive us, and sometimes they hide a reality far more complex than we are willing to face. A photograph is often seen as a window into reality, a frozen moment that captures what the eye can perceive, what the heart chooses to remember, and what society deems worth preserving. When we look at a simple image of two friends standing side by side, smiling, perhaps laughing, and appearing perfectly ordinary, we rarely question the narrative it presents. Our eyes are naturally drawn to the surface, to the immediate impression of warmth, camaraderie, and innocence. There is a sense of comfort in this simplicity because it aligns with our expectations. Friendship is positive, smiles are genuine, and photographs are records of happy, untroubled moments. Yet, appearances, as we often forget, are deceptively fragile. The world beneath the visible layer of any image can be vast, complex, and sometimes disturbingly different from what it outwardly conveys. The photograph that seems so innocuous, so effortlessly charming, can in truth conceal an entire history, an undercurrent of events and emotions that the camera lens cannot, and perhaps never could, fully capture. In this sense, a photograph is both revealing and concealing. It immortalizes only the surface while leaving the deeper currents of reality shrouded in silence. The photograph of these two friends was exactly this paradox. It seemed to offer a glimpse into innocence and loyalty, yet historians who later examined it found that the picture carried a hidden story, one layered with tension, secrecy, and moral complexity. This hidden depth reminds us that what we perceive at first glance is only a fragment of the truth, and it challenges the comfortable illusions we create to make sense of the people and the world around us. The two figures in the image appear ordinary, even mundane, in the simplicity of their stance, yet that ordinariness is precisely what masks the extraordinary weight of the secret they share. Their smiles, casual gestures, and apparent ease are carefully constructed signals to the viewer, signals that life is uncomplicated, that nothing disturbing lies beneath the surface. Yet the eye alone cannot read the subtle signs of inner conflict, the moments of hesitation, the small gestures that betray an underlying unease. These micro-expressions, fleeting and often imperceptible, can reveal layers of unspoken truth, but only when one is trained or motivated to notice them. Historians, with their patient, analytical gaze, are attuned to such subtleties. They trace the photograph's origins, investigate the circumstances under which it was taken, and cross-reference it with letters, diaries, or other historical artifacts. It is through this painstaking examination that the ordinary image is transformed into a profound narrative, one that exposes the chasm between appearance and reality. In this process, the photograph ceases to be a mere snapshot. It becomes a portal into the psychological and moral dimensions of the subjects it depicts. We begin to understand that innocence, as presented in visual form, can be performative, a carefully maintained mask that hides fear, guilt, complicity, or trauma. The hidden depth behind the photograph forces us to confront the idea that human beings are rarely as transparent as we wish them to be, and that even in moments of apparent simplicity, there exist layers of complexity that challenge our perceptions. The photograph's surface narrative, the warmth of friendship, the lightness of shared laughter, is seductive, drawing the observer into a false sense of security. Yet beneath this surface, a shadow may linger, a moral ambiguity, an unspoken event, or a shared complicity in a past action that reshapes the meaning of the image. The true power of this hidden depth is not just in the revelation of the dark secret itself, but in what it tells us about our own assumptions. When we look at a photograph and take it at face value, we are participating in a collective self-deception. We project onto the subjects our desire for simplicity, for morality, for goodness in human relationships. The photograph becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the subjects themselves, but also our own inclination to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths. In this way, the hidden depth behind an ordinary image is both a lesson in history and a lesson in psychology. It teaches us to approach appearances with caution, to question what we see, and to consider what is not immediately visible. It reminds us that life is rarely simple, that human relationships are often intertwined with secrets, and that photographs, despite their seeming concreteness, capture only a fraction of the story. Ultimately, this photograph of two friends exemplifies the profound tension between what is visible and what is hidden, between the surface of innocence and the underlying reality. It challenges us to look deeper, to seek understanding beyond the immediate impression, and to recognize that every moment, every smile, every ordinary scene can contain a story far more complex than we are prepared to acknowledge. Friendship is often perceived as one of the purest forms of human connection, a bond forged in trust, shared experiences, and mutual understanding. We imagine friends as companions who reflect our own desires, who support us unconditionally, and who exist as mirrors of our better selves. Yet friendship, like every human relationship, carries layers far deeper than those we immediately perceive. Beneath the surface of smiles and gestures of closeness, there can exist a psychological mask, a constructed persona that conceals discomfort, fear, or complicity. The photograph of the two friends exemplifies this complex duality. The outward appearance of warmth and connection hides an undercurrent of secrecy that is invisible to the casual observer. At first glance, their posture and expressions communicate affection, loyalty, and innocence. Their closeness suggests trust and ease, a relationship uncomplicated by moral or emotional burdens. But as historians later discovered, the reality was far more intricate. Behind the seeming simplicity of the image lay a hidden truth, a secret that the friendship itself had silently absorbed and maintained. The photograph, by freezing a single moment, preserved not only the visible harmony but also the subtle tension between what was shown and what was concealed. This is the essence of the psychological mask. It allows individuals to present an image that aligns with societal expectations or personal desires, while simultaneously hiding the more troubling aspects of their experience or behavior. In the case of these two friends, their relationship was shaped not solely by affection, but also by shared silence, by mutual recognition of events that they could neither publicly acknowledge nor fully process in private. The mask of friendship functions as a protective mechanism. It shields both the individual and the group from the anxiety and moral conflict that might arise if the hidden truth were exposed. When humans form bonds, there is often an unspoken negotiation, a silent agreement to preserve harmony at the cost of complete honesty. In situations where guilt, trauma, or wrongdoing is involved, this negotiation becomes more pronounced as the bond of friendship transforms into a vehicle for mutual concealment. In the photograph, what appears as camaraderie is in fact a carefully maintained performance. Each gesture, each smile, is a part of a narrative that serves to reassure both the subjects and the observer that life is untroubled, that innocence persists, and that their relationship is untainted. Yet beneath the surface, the friendship is imbued with the weight of complicity. The shared secret that historians uncovered casts a new light on every aspect of the image, What once seemed spontaneous now appears deliberate. What once seemed joyful now carries the subtle trace of unease. This realization forces us to reconsider the nature of human relationships. True friendship may involve understanding, support, and empathy, but it can also involve silence, avoidance, and even complicity. The psychological mask allows individuals to navigate moral complexity without immediately confronting the consequences of their actions or the emotional toll of the truth. The photograph becomes a testament to this duality, a visual representation of the way people often hide the darker aspects of their lives behind familiar, comforting facades. Moreover, the mask of friendship extends beyond the individuals depicted. It shapes the perceptions of those who view it. Outsiders, seeing only the surface, are naturally drawn to the apparent innocence and warmth. They are invited to participate in the illusion, to accept the image as evidence of harmony and goodness. The mask thus operates on multiple levels. It protects the individuals within the friendship while simultaneously deceiving those outside it. The psychological complexity of this dynamic is profound. It highlights how human beings are capable of maintaining appearances even in the face of uncomfortable truths, and how relationships can simultaneously harbor intimacy and secrecy. The photograph, seemingly ordinary, is therefore a study not just in friendship but in the intricacies of the human mind, in our ability to construct realities that mask inner conflict, in our capacity to share silence as much as we share joy, and in the delicate balance between revealing and concealing that defines all social bonds. In essence, the photograph of the two friends is a powerful illustration of how psychological masks operate within relationships, how appearances can betray and conceal simultaneously, and how the most ordinary connections may harbor extraordinary secrets, waiting for history to uncover them. History is often imagined as a linear record, a straightforward timeline of events that neatly catalogs the actions of individuals and societies, yet the reality is far more complex. History is not simply what happened, it is also what was hidden, forgotten, or deliberately obscured. Time itself has a curious relationship with truth. While the present may obscure the past with layers of perception, memory, and intentional omission, history has a way of unearthing what was buried, revealing truths that were once carefully concealed. The photograph of the two friends exemplifies this dynamic. On the surface, it seemed ordinary, innocent, even celebratory. But as historians began to examine it, to trace the context in which it was created, to consult letters, diaries, and archival records, they discovered a narrative far removed from the simplicity of the image. The photograph became a portal into the past, a subtle clue that invited inquiry into what time itself had attempted to hide. What we often fail to recognize is that the passage of time does not erase history. It only buries it beneath layers of neglect, silence, and selective memory. Every photograph, every document, and every artifact carries within it traces of truth, waiting for someone to discern the patterns that connect them. In the case of these two friends, the photograph's initial perception of innocence was misleading because it represented only what the subjects wanted to show, or perhaps only what society expected to see. The dark secret they shared remained invisible to contemporaneous observers because the context was not fully understood, because certain facts were unrecorded or deliberately concealed, and because the human tendency is to accept the narrative presented at face value. Yet historians, with patience, critical thinking, and analytical rigor, are able to peel back these layers. By examining inconsistencies, corroborating multiple sources, and considering the broader social and political environment, they uncover dimensions of reality that were previously inaccessible. This process illustrates a fundamental principle. History is not just a record of events, but a dynamic interplay between concealment and revelation, between the surface and the depths of human experience. The photograph, in this sense, becomes a symbol of how easily appearances can deceive and how persistent inquiry can illuminate hidden truths. It also reminds us that the past has its own agency. Events do not simply vanish. Their consequences linger, shaping memories, influencing narratives, and leaving traces that demand recognition. The dark secret behind the photograph is an example of this persistence. Although it was hidden for years, it could not remain concealed indefinitely. Historians' work demonstrates that even when time seems to obscure the past, the traces left behind, subtle gestures, unexplained relationships, or overlooked details, can be assembled to reconstruct a fuller, more accurate understanding of events. This capability of history to reveal hidden truths carries profound implications for how we understand human nature, morality, and the choices individuals make. It suggests that actions once considered private or inconsequential can resonate through time, that silence does not equate to erasure, and that the pursuit of truth requires diligence, patience, and courage. The photograph of the two friends thus becomes more than a simple image. It is evidence of history's latent power. It illustrates that the stories of individuals are intertwined with the broader currents of human experience, that what is hidden may carry as much significance as what is visible, and that uncovering these truths is essential for understanding the complexities of morality, relationships, and society. Furthermore, the revelation of hidden truths forces us to confront our assumptions. It challenges the comfort of believing that appearances are trustworthy and that what is visible accurately represents reality. It also reminds us that silence, complicity, or concealment, whether intentional or accidental, can have consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. History, in revealing what time tried to bury, becomes a moral compass, a reminder that truth has a persistence that outlives pretense, and that even ordinary images may contain extraordinary revelations. In essence, the story behind the photograph of these two friends demonstrates that the past is never truly gone, that time alone cannot obscure reality, and that the diligent pursuit of history can uncover what was once hidden, exposing the depths of human experience that the surface never revealed. Human beings are rarely simple, and their lives are rarely composed of pure light or absolute darkness. Within every individual exists a duality, a tension between what we choose to reveal and what we instinctively conceal. The photograph of the two friends, seemingly innocent and cheerful, becomes a vivid illustration of this duality, capturing not only the light of human connection, but also the shadow that lingers behind every smile, gesture, and shared glance. On the surface, the image conveys warmth, trust, and companionship, signaling to the observer that the bond between these individuals is wholesome, uncomplicated, and entirely virtuous. The brightness of their expressions suggests a harmony that feels reassuring, familiar, and comforting. Yet, beneath the surface, a darker reality existed, one that historians later uncovered through meticulous research and contextual investigation. The photograph's innocence was deceptive. The friendship it depicted contained layers of hidden complexity, unspoken truths, and moral ambiguity. This contrast between appearance and reality reflects the inherent duality in human nature. People are capable of love, loyalty, and kindness, but they are also capable of concealment, silence, and complicity. The photograph serves as a reminder that the outward self, the persona we project to the world, is only one half of our existence. The other half, often hidden even from ourselves, contains desires, fears, guilt, and secrets that shape our decisions and our relationships in ways that are not immediately visible. The two friends exemplify this tension. Their proximity in the image suggests intimacy and trust, yet it also hints at a shared burden, a secret known only to them. Their smiles, while genuine in appearance, may have been influenced by a subconscious need to present normalcy, to shield themselves and others from the uncomfortable truths of their past. The duality of light and shadow within them mirrors the universal condition of human beings. The constant interplay between the parts of ourselves we are proud to show and the parts we fear or wish to hide. This duality is not merely psychological, it is moral and existential. It forces us to confront the reality that innocence and guilt can coexist, that warmth can coexist with fear, and that relationships can be simultaneously nurturing and morally complex. The photograph, therefore, becomes more than a record of friendship. It is a symbolic representation of the human condition. Every individual carries within them the capacity for goodness and for complicity, for love and for secrecy, for clarity and for darkness. To perceive only the light is to misunderstand the whole. To ignore the shadow is to risk being deceived by appearances. The historical revelation of the dark secret behind the photograph underscores this point. It demonstrates that the outward display of morality, affection, or harmony may conceal choices, actions, or knowledge that exist in tension with that display. The duality of human nature is not a static quality. It is dynamic, shifting with circumstance, pressure, and context. The two friends may have genuinely cared for one another, yet their bond was also shaped by the shadow of shared secrets and unspoken moral dilemmas. This interplay makes human relationships complex, layered, and at times paradoxical. Understanding this duality requires a willingness to look beyond appearances, to question the surface, and to acknowledge the uncomfortable reality that even those we trust most may harbor hidden dimensions of experience. It also challenges us to reflect on our own inner dualities, the parts of ourselves we display proudly versus the parts we conceal, the moments of courage and kindness versus the moments of fear, avoidance, or moral compromise. The photograph of these friends captures this tension with quiet power. Its apparent innocence draws the observer in, while its hidden story provokes reflection on the inherent complexity of human nature. In recognizing the coexistence of light and shadow, we are reminded that the human experience is never simple, that every smile, every gesture, and every relationship carries with it layers of depth that demand careful attention, and that to fully understand any individual or any moment in history, we must be willing to confront both what is visible and what lies beneath. The photograph becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the duality within the subjects, but also the duality within ourselves, challenging us to accept the full spectrum of human nature and the coexistence of innocence and shadow in every life. Human beings are constantly confronted with choices between revealing the truth and preserving silence. These choices are rarely simple, and their consequences often ripple far beyond the immediate moment. The photograph of the two friends, initially perceived as an innocent image, becomes a powerful illustration of this moral tension. On the surface, it presents harmony, trust, and a sense of shared joy. But beneath the surface, the image conceals a darker reality, a secret that neither individual dared to disclose at the time. This concealment is not merely a matter of convenience. It is a profound moral choice, one that reflects the complex interplay between self-preservation, loyalty, fear, and the weight of conscience. When historians later uncovered the hidden truth, the photograph transformed from a simple portrayal of friendship into a symbol of ethical ambiguity. The moral conflict of silence versus truth is universal because it resides at the intersection of human vulnerability and societal expectation. Silence is often chosen to protect oneself or others, to maintain relationships, or to avoid judgment and punishment. Yet in choosing silence, individuals risk complicity in wrongdoing, the perpetuation of injustice, or the distortion of reality. The two friends in the photograph exemplify this dilemma. Their smiles and closeness may have been genuine expressions of their bond. But that bond was also sustained by a mutual decision not to confront, acknowledge, or reveal a truth that could have disrupted their lives and their relationship. This dynamic highlights the paradoxical nature of morality. Actions that preserve harmony in the short term may carry hidden consequences that emerge only over time, and decisions that feel protective may in fact perpetuate harm. The photograph serves as a visual representation of the invisible weight of such choices. Every gesture, every smile, every casual posture becomes imbued with meaning once the underlying secret is revealed. What initially seemed like innocence is reframed as complicity, or at least as a morally ambiguous performance. The moral conflict embedded in silence is further complicated by the social and historical context in which it occurs. Individuals often remain silent because society imposes pressures, fear of ostracization, legal consequences, or personal ruin. In other instances, silence is maintained out of loyalty or love, a desire to protect someone else from harm. The photograph captures this tension. The bond between the two friends may have been strengthened by shared secrecy, even as it became morally fraught. Their closeness, so evident in the image, was inseparable from the choice to remain silent about the secret they carried, illustrating how ethical decisions are rarely binary and often involve navigating a landscape of competing obligations, emotions, and consequences. The revelation of the hidden truth by historians underscores the enduring nature of moral accountability. Time cannot erase the ethical implications of silence. Even when acts are hidden for decades, the eventual disclosure forces both contemporary observers and later generations to confront the decisions that were made, to examine the motivations behind concealment, and to consider the human capacity for both courage and avoidance. This tension between silence and truth resonates not only in historical context but also in everyday life. Every individual has faced moments when speaking out could have changed outcomes, for better or worse, yet fear, discomfort, or self-interest led to restraint. The photograph thus becomes a mirror, reflecting the universal struggle between doing what is immediately safe and doing what is ethically necessary. It prompts reflection on the ways in which silence can simultaneously protect and harm, comfort and betray, preserve relationships and obscure justice. The moral conflict embedded in the photograph encourages us to consider the value of truth, the weight of secrets, and the courage required to confront reality, even when it threatens the stability of relationships or the illusion of innocence. In this light, the seemingly ordinary image of two friends becomes a profound study in human ethics, illustrating that every choice to remain silent carries consequences, that every decision to conceal truth is a negotiation with morality itself, and that understanding the human condition requires acknowledging both the power of silence and the imperative of truth. Appearances have a unique power over human perception. They shape our understanding, guide our judgments, and often deceive us into believing that what we see is all that exists. The photograph of two friends, seemingly innocent and ordinary, offers a striking example of this phenomenon. At first glance, it conveys warmth, trust, and simplicity. The smiles, the casual posture, and the apparent ease between the two figures invite the observer to accept the image at face value. It is comforting to believe that life can be captured in a single frame, that relationships can be distilled into clear, uncomplicated gestures. Yet appearances, as the story of this photograph demonstrates, are profoundly limited. They can conceal as much as they reveal, masking hidden truths, buried secrets, and the moral complexities that define human experience. The photograph's initial innocence was deceptive because it represented only the visible surface of the friendship, leaving the underlying layers unexplored. Historians, through meticulous research, uncovered a hidden truth that transformed the understanding of the image. What seemed like a straightforward moment of companionship was revealed to contain secrecy, moral ambiguity, and the weight of choices that were carefully concealed. This revelation underscores a fundamental truth about appearances. They are never wholly reliable. They invite us to form impressions, but those impressions are fragile, contingent, and often incomplete. To truly understand people, events, or even ourselves, we must cultivate a willingness to look beyond the surface, to question what is presented, and to seek the deeper reality that exists beneath the visible layer. The call to look beyond appearances is not merely a caution about deception, it is an invitation to engage with the complexity of life in a deliberate, thoughtful way. Human beings are multifaceted, capable of both light and shadow, both innocence and complicity. When we rely solely on appearances, we risk missing the subtle interplay of motives, experiences, and moral choices that define each individual. The photograph of these two friends, once thought to be a simple image of companionship, demonstrates this risk vividly. Their outward expressions of warmth and camaraderie concealed a secret that was invisible to contemporaneous viewers. The smiles and gestures that seemed so ordinary were imbued with layers of meaning that only careful examination could reveal. To look beyond appearances, therefore, is to acknowledge that human life cannot be fully understood through superficial observation. It requires attention, curiosity, and a willingness to confront the discomfort of ambiguity. This process also involves recognizing that appearances can serve as masks, intentionally or unconsciously constructed to protect, deceive, or preserve. In the case of the two friends, their outward innocence functioned as a form of social and psychological armor, shielding them from scrutiny and allowing them to navigate their environment without immediate consequence. Yet, this very shield also perpetuated misunderstanding, concealing the truth that would later emerge through historical investigation. The photograph teaches that appearances are not inherently dishonest, but they are incomplete. They capture only what is immediately perceptible, leaving vast terrains of human experience unrepresented. The call to look beyond appearances is a reminder that reality is always layered, that truth is rarely simple, and that every image, every relationship, and every event contains dimensions that are invisible at first glance. It is a lesson in critical observation, in the cultivation of insight, and in the humility required to accept that our initial judgments may be flawed. Furthermore, this lesson extends beyond photographs to all areas of life. In relationships, in social interactions, in history, and even in self-reflection, there is always more than what meets the eye. By looking beyond appearances, we cultivate empathy, understanding, and discernment. We learn to recognize that every person carries inner complexities, that every action has underlying motivations, and that every story has layers waiting to be explored. The photograph of these two friends thus becomes a metaphor for the human condition itself. It illustrates the danger of accepting surfaces as complete, the importance of questioning and probing, and the value of seeking the unseen realities that shape our world. It also challenges us to confront our own assumptions, biases, and desires for simplicity. To truly see is to look beyond appearances, to acknowledge ambiguity, and to embrace the complexity that defines human experience. In this way, the call to look beyond appearances is both a practical and philosophical imperative. It reminds us that understanding, truth, and moral clarity require effort, reflection, and courage. It encourages us to engage with life actively, to question the narratives presented to us, and to recognize that the most ordinary moments, images, and relationships may conceal extraordinary truths. The photograph of these two friends exemplifies this lesson in a striking, tangible way. What once seemed simple and harmless becomes profound, serving as a reminder that appearances are never the whole story, that the visible is always intertwined with the invisible, and that the pursuit of understanding demands attention to the hidden, the subtle, and the morally complex dimensions of life. The story of this photograph reminds us that nothing is ever as simple as it appears. Every smile, every gesture, and every relationship may carry layers of hidden meaning, shaped by silence, secrecy, and moral ambiguity. History has the power to reveal what time tried to bury, and in doing so, it teaches us to look beyond the surface, to question the narratives presented to us, and to confront the shadows that coexist with the light in human nature. The photograph, once thought innocent, becomes a mirror, reflecting both the hidden truths of the past and the unexamined complexities within ourselves. In the end, it calls us to cultivate awareness, empathy, and courage, to recognize that the visible is only part of the story, and that only by looking deeper can we truly understand the lives, choices, and secrets that shape the human experience.